If you've ever found yourself spiraling down a late night rabbit hole of what am I meant to do and why haven't I found it yet? And let's be honest, who hasn't? Then you're in the right place. I'm 𝘵𝘗𝘳𝘓, career clarity expert and 5-time certified career coach, and I'm here to help you navigate the question of how to find a career that truly lights you up. On Career Clarity Unlocked, we're all about those light bulb moments. I'm talking to people who are still trying to figure out what they're meant to do, coaching them live to reach that magical, yes, this is it moment. And we'll also hear from those who've already found their dream careers and figure out exactly how they did it. Whether you're looking for inspiration or actionable advice on finding a career you love, I've got you covered. Time to unlock some career clarity. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Career Clarity Unlocked. Okay, tell me if this sounds familiar. You're doing everything right, chasing purpose, climbing the ladder, maybe even switching lanes altogether, and yet something still feels off. Like your work and your soul are just not vibing. Well, get ready. Because in today's episode, we're diving into a career story that's part zigzag, part plot twist, and 100% inspiring. From political campaigns to nonprofit powerhouses to a wildly misaligned detour in commercial real estate. Yep, she went there. Our guest Katie opens up about what it really takes to find meaningful work that doesn't just pay the bills, but actually lights you up. We're going to be talking burnout, mental health, DEI rollbacks, and the sneaky lie that you have to choose between purpose and a paycheck. If you've been wondering if there's actually a place out there where your values, voice, and paycheck all align, this one's for you. So grab your coffee, get comfy. This is a convo you don't want to miss. Welcome, Katie.
𝘵𝘗𝘳𝘓, thank you so much for having me on your podcast and giving me the opportunity to connect with you and your audience.
Oh my God, I am so excited for this conversation with you. And I want to start at the beginning and hear a little bit about you and your career story. Sure. I'm wondering, did you always know that you wanted to be a coach and a leadership educator, or was that a winding road that brought you to where you are today?
It was very much the latter, very much a winding road. So I really describe myself as a bit of a career nomad, but with the thread of altruism pulling through my entire career. So when I went off to college in the year 2000, I went to Miami University in Ohio, and folks are often confused by that. But it was the land of the Miami Indian tribe, and the university was built along the Miami River, hence Miami of Ohio. And we like to say that we were a university before Florida was a state. And wow. So while I was there, I studied political science because I knew that I wanted to make a difference in the world and a positive impact at that. And I firmly believed that politics was the way to do that. And so lucky for me, graduated in an election year in 2004, was hired to work on one of the coordinated campaigns for John Kerry out in Minnesota. And while I thought that was what I wanted to do with my life, when the campaign was done and our candidate lost, there were few job prospects, there wasn't any health insurance, and I realized for myself that I needed more security and stability than this world had to offer, at least right out of the gate. And so transitioned into working in the nonprofit sector. I was like, okay, it is a full-time W-2 employee job. There's going to be more security and stability here, even though the compensation isn't necessarily in alignment with the value that we provide to society, but moved from Minneapolis to New York City. And I spent several years working for an organization called the Innocence Project, engaging in fundraising and development. And so the Innocence Project works to get innocent people out of prison who were wrongfully convicted using DNA evidence that wasn't available for analysis at the time of their conviction. So these are folks who went to prison based upon blood type, false eyewitness identification, false confession, really kind of junk science types of evidence. When back in the 90s and before, DNA was not a thing that was being used. And it was my job alongside my boss to raise the money, to pay for the testing, the legal fees, and then of course, folks who have been in prison, who come out, a whole new world exists, right? So a lot of these men, and it was the majority men, went in at 16, 17, 18 years old, coming out in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and not only are they coming out to limited family and community, but a world that did not exist. If you just even think about all of the advancements that we've made since COVID, the world is not the same as it was in 2019. Imagine 40 years away from it. And so a lot of the fundraising we did as well was to help folks reestablish themselves in society and providing those services. While the work itself I knew was very, very impactful and changing lives, and we were also changing systems and policies. It's very hard to live in New York City on any salary, much less a nonprofit salary. And so came home to Chicago, which is where I'm chatting to you from today, and started working at the AIDS Foundation of Chicago, doing very similar work, and still felt this sense of, I'm not feeling a great deal of satisfaction, a great deal of engagement. And I really believed it was because of salary and compensation. And so I didn't visit a career counselor, didn't visit with a career coach. What I did do was see a lot of my friends having a great amount of success in commercial real estate. And I'm like, well, if they can do it, I can do this too. Not taking into account the things that make me feel a sense of competence at work, the things that make me feel a sense of community. And had I visited with a career coach or career counselor, 𝘱𝘳, they would have said, hey, there's a values discrepancy here between what you're bringing to the table and the values of the industry. You might want to investigate this before you make that leap. I didn't do that. And as a result, on the very, very first day, before the lunch hour even hit, I knew I had made the wrong choice. And to be totally truthful, the AIDS Foundation of Chicago and the commercial real estate firm I was working for were on the same street. And I went back to my old employer on that day to have lunch with my old colleagues because I knew I had made an incredible misstep. But I was raised in a family system where we grit, we don't quit. And we also do not quit a job until we have another job lined up, which is not my approach or methodology when working with others today, but it was at that time. And I don't know if this has happened to you where you've been in a company, an organization, in an environment where your feelings and your thoughts and your behaviors couldn't be aligned with what you really believed in order to actually belong and get rewarded within that system. And so the 3.5 years that I worked there, it took a tremendous toll on my mental health, because when our feelings, thoughts, and behaviors are misaligned, it's actually a recipe for a complete mental health breakdown. And so in 2012, I took a medical leave of absence from work for mental health, which at the time was pretty much unheard of. We were hardly talking about mental health at all unless we were stigmatizing it. And we definitely weren't talking about the employer's responsibility to the employees' mental health and well-being during the time that they are there. And so taking that leave actually, I believe at that time did a number on my professional reputation, which I don't believe it does anymore because I own the story. It's part of why I do the work that I do today, but at the time it did. And while I was in treatment and doing the healing work around my mental health diagnoses of major depression and panic disorder, I realized I wasn't the only person having these challenges, both in terms of my mental health, but also career and workplace and professional identity, feeling misaligned with who we are and how we want to move through the world. And it was at that time I decided I'm going to go back to school, get my master's degree in mental health counseling so I can help people at the intersection of work and mental health. And that's exactly what I did. At 30, while still working full time, because I had to support myself, took classes on the evenings and in the weekends to earn my graduate degree in counseling. And during that period of study, it became pretty evident to me that the work I wanted to do with folks really wouldn't be covered by insurance because they do not want to cover therapy sessions about work, because work is technically not a mental health diagnosis, even though work can lead to burnout, and the symptoms of burnout are identical to depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress. So instead of getting licensed as a counselor, decided to pivot into coaching. And I spent 10 years working in higher education at institutions like DePaul, University of Chicago, the University of Texas at Austin, in helping students deepen their self-awareness and self-knowledge so that they could create that alignment that tends to elude so many employees. And while I loved the work and it very much aligned with that altruistic value set and driver that I had, it is a very elite group of folks who gets to access an education at one of these institutions, as well as all the bells and whistles that come along with it. So in 2018, I got myself an LLC, built a very simple website on Wix, and said, if I build this, will anyone come? Do people really want and need career and leadership development services outside of higher education? And wouldn't you know, they do. And so had some nice steady growth from 2018 to 2020. Then the pandemic hit and we experienced what we're now calling the Great Resignation. Personally, I call it the Great Talent Grab because companies, as we're seeing now, were really just trying to outdo their competitors in terms of the talent that they were able to acquire during that period. And so the business really took off, and I made the choice in 2022 to resign from my full-time job at the University of Chicago to focus on the business full-time. And for me, the ability to do that really rested on having enough money saved to pay my mortgage and my health insurance for a full year if I never brought on another client. And so I said to myself, Teresa, 2022, this is the year I'm turning 40. If I don't bet on myself now, when am I going to do it? Worst case scenario, I go back to working for someone else in 2023. And wouldn't you know what you can do for a small business when you can dedicate 40 to 50 hours a week to it? I'm now 3 years and a couple months into being a full-time entrepreneur, business owner, coach, keynote speaker, workplace strategist, and it is the most professionally rewarding and financially satisfying 3 years of my career. And I'll pause there, but that's the journey.
Wow. Oh my God, that was incredible hearing your journey from politics, working on a campaign, to the Innocence Project, to the AIDS Foundation, to a total detour into commercial real estate. And I can so relate to that, going through a time where spending 40 plus hours a week feels so misaligned to what you actually want to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Going all the way to a leave of absence for mental health, and then getting your degree in counseling, and now doing work that you really, really enjoy. That's an incredible journey. Did you always think like you're gonna find that place that you're gonna be really happy at?
I always hoped. I never lost hope, right? Which is why I made so many pivots and changes and side steps, because I always had hope. I better understand myself. I better understand my needs and my goals and my strengths and my values. Every time it's going to get better. And I think that every time it didn't necessarily get better, but it got me closer to what was really going to be the most engaging, satisfying, fulfilling, and rewarding. And so it's more about having that hope and optimism, which is one of the things that I really try and instill in my clients. The goal is to take the next best step. Right now, you might want to be the CFO of your company, but I want you to write that in pencil, because what happens in 3 months, 6 months, a year, we need to remain open to the possibilities that other things might present to us, especially when our curiosity gets triggered, or our imagination starts running wild on a project. Those are experiences not to ignore, as you are moving toward these longer term career goals.
100%. And as I was listening to your story, you've been in two places that I see a lot of people feeling like it's an either or. So either it's you're working for a company that's really aligned, like in your case, the Innocence Project or the AIDS Foundation, where you're doing work that feels really good, but you're not getting paid for it. Mm-hmm. Or the total opposite, commercial real estate, you're probably getting paid really well, but it feels totally misaligned. Mm-hmm. Do you see it too, that people believe those are the only two options? And now, having gone through the journey, do you still see it as the only two options? Or do you feel like, no, there is actually one options where you can have both?
No, I do believe there is a middle way, and it's not a this or that, either or binary, because here's the thing. And I was actually recording a podcast earlier today with a podcaster out of Portugal. So interesting. Just hitting all over the globe today. But we were really talking about the things that don't work for me, or are toxic and harmful for me, aren't toxic and harmful for everybody, right? So there were a lot of people when I was working in commercial real estate who felt totally aligned with what they're doing. And I'm like, good on them, but that's not for me, right? And same in nonprofit, people who felt totally aligned with the mission, the vision, the values, and commerce and compensation is just not that driver for them. And so I want to be careful that it's you either give up your time, effort, energy, and financial future, or you have a financial future and it's soul sucking. I don't truly believe it's that way, because we all have different things that drive us. And the most important thing is really getting to that moment of self-awareness to say, this is what I need, this is what I'm willing to accept. And then the path becomes so much more clear, and you can be so much more confident walking it. And sometimes it's cobbling together a bunch of different things, or saying, this is where I get my W-2 paycheck, and this is what I do to really satisfy and fulfill myself outside of work.
I love this perspective, and I so agree. It's not, I don't see it as one or the other either. There are, as you said, everyone is satisfied or fulfilled by doing something different or working for a different company. And that's beautiful. It's just about finding that place for yourself. Yeah. And it's just the place for you. It's not, might not be the right place for anyone else, but it's, what is that place for you?
Yes, exactly.
Now, with the given political climate in the US, all of that adds another factor into the decision of what feels aligned. And as we've been hearing over the last month, companies are rolling back DEI initiatives, and there's a lot of economic uncertainty. People are really afraid, either have already been impacted by layoffs or are worried about layoffs. And I'm especially hearing from women, people of color, LGBTQ professionals, of how negatively impacted they are in their day-to-day life, but also emotionally, of the fear that's everywhere right now.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on what can help them to advocate for themselves, still make an impact in their careers, possibly step into leadership roles, even when it feels like everything is stacked against them?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, do I have thoughts? Yes, I have lots of thoughts. And I also just want to acknowledge as I'm sharing my thoughts, these are coming from the perspective of a cisgender white woman, right? And so if I misstep, and your listeners and your audience hear something come out of my mouth that is disagreeable, I invite them to invite me to consider a different perspective, right? So this is just one. But before I jump into that, I do want to touch on something you mentioned around layoffs. So one of the things that we're seeing right now is, and back in over the summer, I was calling this summer of 2024, we're in kind of a stalemate of a labor market, right? So employers are not creating new jobs, employees are not leaving their jobs for new opportunities out of fear of being the last one in, first one out, even though, according to the Gallup organization, 50% of employed Americans are actively looking for new work right now. People are not actually taking that work if it becomes available to them. And this stalemate of a market has now been dubbed a frozen labor market. It is a frozen labor market that is now being flooded with more than 100,000 federal employees, right? And we don't see that stopping anytime soon. And so I worry less about the people who are fully employed at this moment. And I worry more about the job seekers who have been on the market for a while, because prior to Donald Trump taking the office of the president, we were seeing folks where it was an average of 5 months for someone who was fully employed to get an offer to start a new job from start to finish in their search. For someone who was unemployed, it was 10 months. Now, I can guarantee, while not knowing the new numbers there, they're not improving. And so for folks who are on the fence about whether or not you should start engaging with someone to help you get those materials in order, help you to prepare for interviews, brush up that LinkedIn, how to engage in networking, don't delay, start right now. And that's not a sales pitch from me. Just get some support, because it is bonkers out there. And so I want to put that plug in so people know the data and some facts. But when it comes to people who are fully employed, having worked in an environment during Joe Biden's presidency, where we were seeing this great push, right, for not just diversity, but for people to feel like they are included and they belong where they're at. And the truth of the matter is, DEI, from my perspective now, is just being used as a dog whistle for folks that identify as Black, Hispanic, Latino, LGBTQ, women. That's all the word is. It's a dog whistle for marginalized communities, not for the actual practices and policies that people were trying to enact while Joe Biden was president. And so the question to what can people do, one of the things that I've received compliments on throughout my life is my thoughtfulness around language. And we know that language is an incredibly powerful tool. And the Republicans invested in it extensively in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, to the point that all of that research around language is what allowed President George W. Bush to emerge and win in 2000 and again in 2004. And so when we talk about how folks can advocate for themselves, I want you to continue to use the words that people are telling you you can't use anymore, because sticks and stones might break your bones, but words are not going to hurt anyone. And so there is a list. Gosh, it feels like it's a mile long of words that federal employees within the Trump administration are no longer allowed to use. Let me just say some of them so your listeners can get a sense of how egregious this is. Accessible, at risk, Black. This is coming from the New York Times. Disparity, equality, female, feminism, gender, health disparity. I'm just at the H's. Most at risk, oppression, prejudice, race, segregation, trauma, mental health, underrepresented, vulnerable populations, women. These are words that are not supposed to be said. Here's how you continue to advocate for yourself. Grab that list from the New York Times and keep saying these words. Say them in conversations in your home, say them in conversations in your community, say them in conversations at work, because these can't actually enact harm on anyone in the way that harm is being enacted purposefully and intentionally on the marginalized communities. Another phrase we are not allowed to say in the workplace. I'm going to pause there. I just said a whole bunch of things, Teresa. What should we talk about there?
That is a lot. And I love the encouragement to use the words we're not allowed to say, or as federal employees are not allowed to say. There are moments where I don't have any words for everything that is going on.
Ironically, right?
And I always try to find that line between sharing what is going on and giving hope of like, yes, this is really, really difficult for a lot of people. And so many, almost everyone is in some way or form negatively impacted by this at the moment. At the same time, how do we give people hope that this is not going to be the end, that there are still companies that can feel aligned, that do the right thing? So what are your thoughts on, because you already very clearly said it's a hard labor market, and I see the same thing. It is so hard. Is there hope that you can find work for a company that does the right thing, that does allow people to talk about race, marginalized communities, everything on this list, companies who still stand by their mission or vision that they had prior to Trump's administration? Do you see that there is hope, or does it feel like right now it's just, you got to take what you get?
Oh, no, because if we take what we get, we are very much going to find ourselves 6 months, 12 months, 18 months from now in a full-on authoritarian dictatorship, right? And so I was listening to Pod Save America this morning, and one of the guests shared that people in and from Europe are talking to Americans like you and me saying, yes, this sucks. And we, as Europeans, have been through this many times before. And you can either fight now and continue to fight for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. But if you wait any longer, this is going to be what it is. And so what I would encourage your listeners to think about is, what are the challenges that you can make on a micro level every day to ensure that you are contributing to this not becoming our norm? Because it's not the norm yet. They're just trying to make it that way. And if we ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist, and after 4 years that this administration will go away, if we sit in that ignorance, in that willful ignorance, because we all know what's going on, we're going to have much bigger fish to fry, monsters to fight down the road. So do what you can every day. Don't wait for somebody else to do the right thing, say the right thing, or take an action. All actions in service of the democracy that I know so many of us still believe in. We need to be fighting for that right now. And a lot of that is using our voice in civil protest.
I couldn't be more aligned with that. And I'm originally from Germany. So I know. For me, it's not that long ago. My grandparents, they lived through World War II. I heard, they're no longer alive, but I heard all their stories of what that was like. So it's not like this is thousands and years ago. It was yesterday for us.
Yeah.
When you're from Germany, and for many people in this world. So 100% agree. Another topic I wanted to really dive into is that at the same time, right, we're seeing so many layoffs in the US right now, which I feel it really impacts also not the people that are, not only the people that were laid off, but also the people that are still working, that are now doing the work of 2 or 3 people, or of being afraid going to work every day. I have friends who have federal jobs, and every day they are scared to go to work and get that email that this is their last day. So all of this, and even prior to this, there's a lot of things at work that impact our mental health, and you've lived through that as well. But it's still not being talked about enough. I feel like it's becoming a bigger topic, but how can we make mental health and work a topic that we talk about more? And how can we also give people tools that they can balance their professional lives and their ambition with their own well-being?
Yeah, I love this question so much. And I think, the pandemic was tragic. It was a global tragedy, a global trauma, and there's still some really positive things I think that came out of it for all of us. One of them being the understanding that, or at least what I think is an understanding that we are humans who happen to work, not workers who happen to be human. And an employer has a responsibility to the human that goes into that office or opens up that laptop for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes on the weekend, to do no harm to their employees. And so as we were seeing the early stages of the pandemic not just take a toll on people physically, but in terms of their mental health, because as humans, we're social creatures. We are meant to be in close physical proximity to each other and touch and hug and care for each other. What we called social distancing, it wasn't, it was physical distancing, right? And that isolation for folks really exacerbated what I think was a really deep mental health undercurrent that had not been addressed in society. And so in 2022, the folks at the Gallup organization and the Work Human company came together to start researching employee well-being and what does it take for an employer to really set their employee up for well-being and strong mental health. And they discerned 5 dimensions of employee well-being, and they are career, financial, community, emotional, and physical. The career dimension, and this is really important because it doesn't even, all of this, truthfully, I think anyone could wind it around to say, oh, this is all diversity, equity, inclusion. It's not, it's just good labor practices.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
What's good for the most vulnerable person is good for everyone, period. And so with the career dimension, what we're really looking at is, does the employee see a clear path for advancement? And are they seeing people who look like them advance along that path? And if those 2 conditions aren't met, then they can't feel well in their career, which is exactly what you're describing right now. Yeah. The financial piece is all about the calibration of, am I getting paid my value to do the same job that another person is doing? And are we equally compensated, regardless of gender, race, sexual identity, where we live in the world, right? So one of the things I'm a huge advocate for is global pay. Whether I am working out of my home office in Chicago or down in Nashville, Tennessee, my talent and value doesn't change. I deliver the same value to my clients regardless of where I'm living, right? And so I would really encourage employers to start thinking about that too. How can we have more global pay equity where we are really valuing talent instead of where that talent resides? The other piece of financial is, are you paying your folks a living wage so that they don't have to worry about their basic needs being met around housing, food, clothing. I'm throwing books and education in for basic needs as well, and not just for them but for their families, because if you have an employee who's worried about paying their electric bill or worried about paying for childcare, they're not going to be as focused as they could be at the work at hand when they are doing that job for you. When it comes to community, the folks that work human like to say folks do not readily pack up and leave their communities, right? We're not just going to leave on a whim. Our families, our neighbors are the place where we've put down roots. And the same thing holds true in a workplace. If you feel that sense of community and like you actually belong, but you can't feel like you belong if there isn't psychological safety. And at the end of the day, psychological safety, according to Dr. Amy Edmondson out of Harvard, is really just the absence of interpersonal fear, that I can come to work and do the best job that I can, say what's on my heart, say what's on my mind without fear of retribution for who knows what. And that piece around psychological safety flows into the emotional aspect and the emotional dimension. And this is where I talk to leaders and employers a lot, because they're like, Katie, come in and help train our leaders how to counsel their employees. I'm like, that's not what you hired your developer to do. That's not what you hired your final financial analyst to do. You didn't hire them to be therapists. You hired them to do a great job and then lead other people. And so the goal here is really to engage in a practice of non-maleficence, which is this idea of do no harm. It is everyone's responsibility to take care of the mental health of employees. It is my responsibility. It is my people leaders' responsibility. It is the employer's responsibility in terms of training and development for those leaders and the policies they enact. And so really, people leaders have more of an impact on an employee's mental health than their spouse, partner, significant other, and their therapist. And so on that emotional piece, and this might feel disconnected, but we need to be treating and training everyone who enters a company or an organization as if they're going to ascend to the C-suite, because at some point they are going to be leading others if they stick around in your organization long enough, and if not leading others, working alongside others. And we don't want folks causing harm to one another. So investing in leadership development that focuses in on self-awareness, communication, navigating conflict. Conflict is good when we do it right. It makes us better and it moves us further along. And then finally, there's the physical dimension. My gosh, there's so many things to talk about here. People like to default immediately to the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is that, and it's so much more. Again, like I said, what's good for the most vulnerable among us is good for everybody. And so here, what I really try and focus in on is, do you allow your employees to turn off Slack when they close their computer for the day, or when they leave the building, so that they can get a full 8 hours of sleep at night and have those social connections with their family and friends when they get home? Are you giving them enough time between Zoom meetings to get some sunlight on their face and some fresh air and nourish their bodies, instead of just chugging Celsius drinks and iced coffees with some cold foam all day long? And so thinking about it more holistically, but to answer your question, it's those 5 things. And as an individual, I would encourage you to look at, what are my needs in those 5 areas? And what can I advocate for myself and for those around me? Because if you're doing it in a way that's more than just about you, especially if you're a woman, that is going to get rewarded. And if you're experiencing a challenge with it, I promise you someone else at work is too.
I love that you broke that down in the 5 areas. And on the one hand, it seems so common sense. If you are an employer, don't you want your employees to feel well so that they can do their best work? Don't you want them to be physically healthy, mentally healthy, paid, compensated fairly, all of these things? But on the other hand, it seems in so many organizations so unaligned with what's really happening on the day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's what I see that's even worse than the misalignment is just the complete lip service that's done for it. So yeah, we're invested in your mental health. Here's some free appointments with BetterHelp. Here is the Calm app, and we are offering a yoga class every Friday at the end of the day before you go. And it's like, no, Friday, the end of the day, I want to go be with my friends and be with my family and be with my dogs. And I can download that app and pay $1.99 a month myself. I also have medical insurance that can provided by you, so I can seek out therapy. The challenge is I can do all of those things to take care of myself, but if I come into an environment where the people are not trained to effectively work alongside other people, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what coping skills I have and what I do to take care of myself at home. And so it's really doing the core root work and making changes there and planting new seeds and digging up all of the weeds and the nonsense that actually doesn't move the needle, and making changes to how people work and how they experience whether it's 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 8 to 10, who even knows anymore? Like you said, people are getting quietly hired to do the job of their peers and colleagues right now. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do.
I absolutely agree. And I'm so glad that you're one of the people who helps organizations and individuals to do that work and to improve in all of those areas. Before we end this conversation, if listeners can just take one thing away from this conversation, what do you hope it is?
Yeah, it's that you have and develop the courage to always take the next best step. It is a very overwhelming and anxiety producing era of humanity right now across the board in all dimensions. And the very best antidote to anxiety will always be action. Mm-hmm. So just keep taking the next best step. It's going to help you deepen that self-trust. It's going to help you deepen your self-confidence, and it's going to get you closer, not just to the life you want to live, but ensuring that you get to live it within the democracy that we still have right now.
Thank you for adding that, Katie. I really appreciate that. And take that next best step. If we all keep doing that, everything is going to look more positive every single day. Where can people connect with you and learn more about you and 𝘕𝑁courage Coaching?
For sure. So take a visit to my website, 𝘕𝑁courage.org. You can also shoot me an email at the same extension, Katie@𝘕𝑁courage Coaching. You'll get me, not an AI bot or a chat bot, I promise. But then also follow me on LinkedIn. We post a lot of great information and content about the labor market and job searching, leadership, workplace culture. And then on Instagram, if you need some good workplace laughs and giggles amid all of this chaos, you can find us there as well at 𝘕𝑁courage Coach Chicago.
I can't wait to follow you on Instagram. I'm not following you there yet, but I can't wait.
Oh, Teresa, I can't wait for us to do the follow back.
Yes, and we'll be sure to have all of those links in the show notes so that any of our listeners can find you. Thank you so much, Katie, for being here today. This was absolutely an incredible conversation. And our listeners, I am so certain, take so much away from this. So thank you again for being here today.
You are most welcome, Teresa, and I'd be happy to come back and chat more anytime.
Wow. I told you this conversation was going to be something special, right? Katie's story is such a powerful reminder that finding your place, your real place, doesn't always happen on the first try, or not even always on the third. But if you keep taking the next right step, stay curious, and trust yourself a little more each time, you will get there. And when you do this, oh, it is so worth it. And if you're sitting here right now wondering, what's my next right step? I've got you. Book a free consultation call with my team and let's figure this out together. will get you that career clarity faster than you think and with a whole lot less stress. You can find the link in the show notes, and we cannot wait to chat with you. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and I will see you next week on Career. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Career Clarity Unlocked. If you're feeling stuck in that what's next spiral and are ready to finally break free, let's chat. You can book your free career clarity call where we'll uncover what's really important to you, tackle any obstacles holding you back, and map out your best next step. Schedule your free 30-minute call today on careerbloomcoaching.com. And before you head out, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you never miss an episode. If today's conversation gave you new insights and inspiration, please leave a review. It really helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend or on social media. Your support truly means the world. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time.